Hey guys, a hero, a monster's end, and then pure magic takes flight. Tonight, we find out how the magnificent Pegasus was truly born. We're going to explore his mythical origins, drifting back to a time when the world was young and the gods of Olympus were, well, let's just say they were a rather dramatic bunch. Imagine for a moment, you're standing on a cliff overlooking the Aegean Sea, the salty spray kissing your face, the sun warm on your skin. Above you, the sky is an endless canvas of brilliant blue, and just for a second, you think you see a flicker of white wings against the distant clouds. It's a world of heroes, monsters, and divine beings whose whims could change your life in an instant. Frankly, you probably wouldn't survive 5 minutes in ancient Greece without Wi-Fi and a decent data plan, let alone facing a Gorgon having a particularly bad hair millennium. But tonight, we're just going to float gently through their stories. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It really does help the channel, and it lets me know you're out there, somewhere in the quiet of your own space. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself in a world that feels both ancient and intensely alive, a place where the very air seems to hum with unseen energies and the whisper of forgotten magic. This is the Greece of myth. Long before the great philosophers started asking all those terribly sensible and arguably less exciting questions. Here, the divine is as real as the gnarled olive trees dotting the hillsides, their silvery leaves shimmering in the hazy afternoon sun. You can almost taste the wild thyme crushed underfoot as you wander these imagined landscapes, the scent sharp and earthy. The gods of Olympus are the ultimate power players, a sprawling, often squabbling, celestial family of supreme beings who hold the fate of mortals in their frequently capricious and surprisingly well-manicured hands. Zeus, the king of the gods, rumbles his thunder from his lofty mountain throne, occasionally pausing to aim a lightning bolt or two with a theatrical flourish. Beside him, Hera, his ever-watchful queen, keeps a keen, and often justifiably suspicious eye on his many divine commitments. But tonight, our gaze narrows to two particularly influential and occasionally fiercely clashing deities, Poseidon, the formidable lord of the restless seas, and Athena, the clear-eyed goddess of wisdom. Imagine Poseidon first. You feel the ground give a little shiver, a subtle tremor that speaks of his immense, untamed power. He is the earth shaker, the one who commands the crashing azure waves and the dark, mysterious depths of the boundless ocean. His domain is vast, beautiful, untamed, and just a little bit frightening, much like his famously short temper. Picture him with a beard that flows like sea foam whipped by a storm, his eyes the shifting colors of a turbulent sea, and in his powerful grip, his formidable trident, the very symbol of his authority over the waters. With a mere flick of that three-pronged spear, he can summon terrifying tempests or, when he's in a better mood, calm the most turbulent waters. He is also, very importantly for our unfolding story, the god of horses. It's said he created the first horse by striking the earth with his trident, and these magnificent, spirited creatures are sacred to him. You might even picture him thundering across the wave tops in a chariot pulled by shimmering, golden-maned steeds. He's a god of raw, primal energy, not always the most thoughtful deity on the block, and rather notorious for a string of, shall we say, enthusiastic romantic pursuits that often landed him, and those he pursued, in quite a bit of divine drama. If Olympus had its own reality TV show, Poseidon would undoubtedly be a recurring star, probably famous for flipping tables or islands. Then there's Athena. As you turn your thoughts to her, a sense of clarity seems to wash over you, a feeling of sharp, cool intelligence and unshakable purpose. She is the goddess of wisdom, yes, but also of strategic warfare, the kind that involves meticulous planning and outsmarting your opponent, not just brute force. and also of vital crafts, particularly weaving. She is the steadfast patron of heroes and the revered protector of her namesake city, Athens. Athena is often depicted with a keen, unwavering gaze, frequently clad in gleaming armor, a spear held ready in her hand, and her trusted owl, a symbol of her profound watchfulness and wisdom, perched sagely nearby. One of the most enduring and mainstream historical facts about her, as recounted in ancient texts like Hesiod's Theogony, is her rather unconventional and dramatic birth. She sprang fully formed and in full battle armor, directly from the head of Zeus after he had, in a somewhat extreme case of avoiding a problematic prophecy, swallowed her pregnant mother, Metis. Talk about a divine headache for Zeus and an undeniably impressive entrance for Athena. She values intellect, skill, order, and unwavering loyalty. While generally just, she possesses a formidable sternness and a fierce, unyielding defense of her honor and her sacred spaces. There's a wonderfully quirky, though rather cautionary, tidbit about Arachne, a mortal woman who boasted that her weaving skills surpassed even those of Athena, the goddess. Not known for taking challenges to her expertise lightly, engaged her in a contest. While Arachne's tapestry was indeed technically flawless, its subject matter, depicting the gods' various indiscretions, was deemed deeply disrespectful. Athena, in her righteous fury, transformed Arachne into a spider, destined to weave her webs for eternity. It's a stark little reminder that getting on the wrong side of a deity, especially one as formidable as Athena, was generally a career-limiting move in ancient Greece. Now, these two powerful deities, Poseidon and Athena, didn't always see eye to eye. In fact, they were notable and often quite bitter rivals. Their most famous dispute, of course, was the contest for the patronage of the great city of Athens. Each offered the city a gift. Poseidon struck the Acropolis with his trident, and a saltwater spring, or in some versions, the first horse, appeared. Impressive, certainly, but perhaps not entirely practical for a city's daily needs. Athena, with her characteristic foresight, offered the olive tree, a sustainable source of food, precious oil, and wood. The Athenians, or their wise king's sea crops, chose Athena's gift, much to Poseidon's eternal, grumbling displeasure. Historians still argue whether these vivid myths of Olympian rivalries, such as the contest for Athens, reflected actual historical political tensions and shifting allegiances between ancient Greek city-states championing different patron deities, or were simply compelling narrative devices designed to explore the complex and often contradictory nature of the divine and human worlds. Either way, this existing tension, this celestial friction between the god of the sea and the goddess of wisdom, created a volatile and unpredictable backdrop for mortals. It meant that their paths, their domains, and their sacred rules could sometimes intersect with explosive, life-altering consequences, especially if an unsuspecting mortal found themselves caught in the divine crossfire. The ancient gods, for all their immense power and supposed wisdom, weren't exactly paragons of calm negotiation or diplomatic conflict resolution. They often preferred grand, dramatic gestures and, quite frequently, making a rather terrifying example of someone. One might say they wrote the original playbook on divine micromanagement and had a real flair for the dramatic exit or entrance, or pretty much any interaction, really. It's in this highly charged atmosphere, under the ever-watchful and sometimes wrathful eyes of these formidable gods, that our story of Pegasus truly begins to take shape. The rules of their world were absolute, at least for mortals, and the sanctity of their temples, their sacred groves, was paramount. Breaking these divine rules, even unintentionally, or being an unwilling participant in their violation, could lead to a fate so dire it would make your worst nightmare seem like a pleasant daydream. And it is one such violation within the hallowed, consecrated walls of a temple dedicated to the virgin goddess Athena that will set in motion a chain of events leading to a miraculous and rather messy birth. It's within one such sacred space, a temple gleaming with polished marble and smelling faintly of incense and old sacrifices, a sanctuary dedicated to Athena, the fiercely virgin goddess of wisdom, that the first threads of our particular story begin to tighten. And at the heart of this looming storm is a young woman. Her name is Medusa. It's a name that, with a heavy dose of tragic irony, can be interpreted as guardian or protectress, though what or who she was truly meant to guard, and from what ultimate fate, are questions that will echo unanswered through the ages. She isn't just any mortal woman, you understand. Her lineage is old, very old, tracing back to the churning, primordial chaos of the sea itself. Her parents are said to be Perseus and Ceto, ancient marine deities, chthonic beings who embody the vast, untamed mysteries and the often unseen terrors of the deep ocean. Think of them not as the relatively polished, Mount Olympus-dwelling gods with their complicated social lives and political squabbles, but as more ancient, elemental forces, the kind of divinities who remember the world before it was neatly mapped out and before Zeus started his reign. Medusa has two sisters, Athena, whose name whispers of forceful strength, and Euryale, meaning far-springer or perhaps wide-leaping, names that already hint at something beyond the purely human. And indeed, in most accounts, these two sisters are born immortal, already touched by a monstrous or at least an otherworldly nature. But Medusa, in these early, sunlit days of her story, is different. She is mortal, she is vulnerable, and by all accounts that have drifted down to us through the millennia, she is breathtakingly, dangerously beautiful. You can picture her, perhaps, moving with a fluid grace that seems to capture the gentle rhythm of waves caressing a peaceful shore. Her laughter is clear and resonant as a bronze wind chime stirred by a summer breeze. But it's her hair that draws the eye, her hair that poets and sculptors would later become so fixated upon, for reasons that will become tragically clear. Imagine it as a cascade of polished obsidian or the richest, darkest bronze, tumbling around a face of exquisite symmetry and youthful bloom. This was an era, remember, where physical beauty, especially in women, was often seen as a divine gift, a visible manifestation of inner grace, or charis as the Greeks might call it, that captivating quality of charm and loveliness. Mainstream historical depictions from ancient Greece, whether in the serene visages of their marble goddesses or the painted figures on their pottery, frequently emphasized ideals such as a straight nose, full lips, clear skin, and that prized symmetrical harmony of features. Long, lustrous hair was particularly celebrated as an attribute of feminine allure and vitality, and Medusa, it seems, possessed this dangerous gift in abundance. Many versions of her myth, particularly those shaped by later Roman poets like Ovid, place her as a devoted priestess serving in one of Athena's magnificent temples. You see her there, a figure of quiet piety and youthful earnestness, moving through the cool, echoing halls of polished stone. Her days are likely measured by the gentle rhythm of sacred duties, meticulously tending to the sacred olive oil lamps whose flames must never die, offering prayers and carefully prescribed sacrifices to the goddess of wisdom, perhaps even participating in the ritual weaving of the perilous, the elaborate robe presented to Athena's statue during grand festivals. As a specific, quirky tidbit of temple life, the weaving of this sacred perilous was a highly honored task, often undertaken by select groups of women and girls, and the intricate designs frequently depicted scenes from Athenian mythology, reinforcing the city's devotion and history. The air around Medusa would be thick with the scent of burning incense, the faint aroma of consecrated olive oil, and the cool, clean smell of ancient marble. As a priestess dedicated to Athena, a virgin goddess renowned for her own fiercely guarded chastity, Medusa herself would have undoubtedly taken a solemn vow of purity, a sacred commitment to dedicate her life and her very being to Athena's unblemished service. This wasn't merely a personal choice, it was a holy covenant. And the temple was meant to be an inviolable sanctuary where such vows were absolutely sacrosanct. Such radiant beauty and profound devotion, however, rarely go unnoticed in a world teeming with mortals and gods, all of whom possess their own vanities, desires, and often a startling lack of respect for boundaries. You can imagine mortal men gazing upon Medusa with open admiration, perhaps a touch of reverent awe, as she performs her sacred duties or appears in public processions. Their admiration, however, would likely be tempered by respect for the sacred space she inhabited and the formidable goddess she served. The gods, though, they often operated under an entirely different and far more self-serving set of rules. It's almost as if you can feel a subtle shift in the temple's serene atmosphere, a faint disturbance in the usually calm air, as whispers of Medusa's unparalleled beauty reach the ears and then the eyes of more powerful and far more dangerous entities. All those hopeful mortal suitors probably had to content themselves with composing heartfelt but ultimately ignored poems on wax tablets, or perhaps commissioning a particularly skilled vase painter to capture her likeness from a distance, the ancient Greek equivalent of a celebrity crush, really. And then his gaze falls upon her. Poseidon, yes, him again, the earth shaker, lord of the wine-dark, turbulent seas, the god who is all primal power, tempestuous moods, and notoriously unrestrained desires. His attention, when it fixes upon something or someone, is not like the fleeting admiration of mortals. It's heavier, more consuming, like the inescapable pull of a powerful ocean current. You feel a sudden prickle of unease, a cold dread that seeps into the sun-warmed marble, as this mighty Olympian, who had once so bitterly vied with Athena for the patronage of Athens itself, now turns his covetous eyes towards one of her consecrated priestesses within the very sanctuary of her temple. Ancient sources themselves vary, and scholars still debate whether Medusa was always a monstrous figure from her inception or if her transformation story, particularly the elements involving her prior beauty and subsequent violation, evolved over time, perhaps reflecting changing Hellenistic or Roman social attitudes towards divine justice, victimhood, and female agency in myth. Regardless of these narrative origins, this pervasive image of her as a devout and stunningly beautiful young woman makes what is to come all the more chilling and all the more tragic. Medusa, in her youthful innocence and unwavering devotion to her goddess, likely feels perfectly secure within the hallowed, protective precincts of Athena's temple. She is, after all, under the direct aegis of one of the most powerful and respected goddesses on Mount Olympus. What conceivable harm could befall her there, in that holy place? Her daily worries probably revolve around ensuring the altar flowers remain perfectly fresh, or that she doesn't accidentally trip over her gracefully flowing robes during a solemn, intricate ritual. She certainly wouldn't be expecting a full-blown Olympian deity to so flagrantly disregard the sanctity of his own niece's temple, a place under Athena's direct protection. It's a bit like expecting a tsunami in your bathtub. Theoretically, with enough misdirected power, it could happen, but it's so audacious, so against the natural order of things. It seems utterly unthinkable. You'd imagine a temple dedicated to a virgin goddess known for her formidable strategic mind and equally formidable temper would have some fairly advanced divine security systems in place. Perhaps a celestial alarm that shrieks like 1,000 harpies, or an invisible force field powered by pure, unadulterated maidenly rage. Alas, it seems even the divine realm lacked a truly effective HR department for handling intergodly disputes and egregious misconduct. The threat to Medusa isn't some vague, abstract danger. It's a specific, relentless focus from a god who is not accustomed to being denied, and whose desires often sweep aside all other considerations. And Athena, for all her wisdom and power, is not omniscient, not always present in every corner of her domain, every single second of every day. The stage is now quietly, terribly set. The stage is indeed quietly, terribly set. You can almost feel the air in Athena's temple grow still, the usual gentle drafts that whisper through the colonnades ceasing, as if holding their breath. This temple, imagine it as a house built for a goddess, a place of profound peace and reverence. Ancient Greek temples, you see, weren't primarily designed for large congregations of worshippers like many modern religious buildings. Instead, a temple was considered the literal dwelling place of the deity it honored, a naos or inner sanctum housing the precious cult statue of the god or goddess, along with dedicated treasures and offerings. Most public rituals and sacrifices actually took place outdoors, at an altar situated in the temple's vicinity. So, the temple proper, this hallowed structure where Medusa serves, is an intensely sacred and supposedly inviolable space. An earthly home for Athena herself. Its very stones are imbued with her presence. Its shadows hold the quiet weight of her divinity. Into this sanctuary of stillness and devotion, a disruptive power begins to intrude. Perhaps it starts subtly, a sudden, uncharacteristic chill that races across the polished marble floors, extinguishing a few of the ever-burning sacred lamps. Or maybe the waters in the lustral basins ripple without cause, reflecting a distorted, ominous light. Then, a more definite presence. Poseidon. He doesn't burst in with a crash of tidal wave. That's not his style when he's on one of his clandestine errands. No, this is a more insidious arrival. The heavy, damp scent of the deep ocean inexplicably filling the air. A pressure building that makes your ears ache, the distant, rhythmic sound like the slow beat of a colossal heart, or waves crashing on a far-off, unseen shore. You, as Medusa, might feel at first as a deep unease, a primal instinct screaming that something is terribly wrong. Your duties falter. The familiar, comforting routines of the temple suddenly feel fragile, exposed. What happens next is a dark stain on the heart of the myth, a moment of profound sacrilege. We don't need to linger on the horrifying specifics. This is a story for drifting to sleep. After all, not for nightmares. But you must understand that Poseidon, in his divine arrogance and unbridled lust, violates not only Medusa, but also the sanctity of Athena's temple itself. He takes her, a consecrated priestess sworn to virginity, within the very walls of the goddess's sacred home. It is an act of unthinkable desecration, a calculated insult to Athena, using her own sanctuary, her own devotee, as the stage for his transgression. It's a display of power, yes, but also of immense disrespect, a defilement of everything Athena holds sacred. It's a stark reminder that for all their supposed glory, the gods of myth could be terrifyingly self-serving, their actions often reflecting the raw, untamed forces of nature they embodied rather than any discernible moral code. As a quirky, yet telling, aspect of ancient Greek religious practice, many sanctuaries had extremely strict purity laws and taboos. For example, within certain sacred precincts, no one was allowed to be born or to die. Armed individuals were often forbidden entry, and even uttering certain words could be considered a profanation. Poseidon's actions here shatter every conceivable taboo, turning a place of purity into a scene of profound violation. In the immediate, echoing aftermath, you can imagine Medusa utterly broken. The sacred vows she cherished, the purity she had dedicated to her goddess, all lie shattered around her like a fallen statue. The cool marble beneath her feels like ice, the familiar scent of incense, now a sickening reminder of what has been lost. There's no comfort here, only the profound shock of betrayal by a god, and perhaps she might later feel by the sacred space that failed to protect her. You'd think, with all those oracles muttering prophecies and divine messengers zipping about on winged sandals, someone might have given Medusa a polite heads-up. A simple, beware the god of the sea with a notorious lack of impulse control, especially if you're in his niece's temple scroll, might have been helpful. But alas, divine early warning systems seem to be perpetually on the fritz. How Athena becomes aware of this outrage isn't always clearly stated. Perhaps the temple itself cries out in its desecration. The sacred olive trees within its precincts suddenly wilting, the cult statue of the goddess weeping marble tears. Or maybe a lesser nymph or a temple attendant, horrified, brings the news. More likely, Athena, in her divine connection to her own sacred spaces, simply knows. A wave of icy fury, as cold and sharp as her spear point, would emanate from her, a silent, terrible understanding of the sacrilege that has occurred. There is considerable scholarly discussion about the portrayal of divine justice in such myths, particularly whether Athena's subsequent anger is directed more at Poseidon for the sacrilege, who, as a powerful male god, often seems to escape direct and proportionate punishment in these tales, or unfairly and tragically at Medusa, who now embodies the temple's defilement and becomes the most accessible target for a wrath that needs an outlet. The air in the temple grows heavy, not with Poseidon's oceanic presence anymore, but with something far more chilling, the gathering storm of Athena's righteous and terrifyingly focused anger. The faint scent of olives and wisdom that usually permeates her sanctuaries might now be sharpened with the metallic tang of impending retribution. Athena, the goddess of strategic planning and meticulous thought, probably hadn't penciled in sacrilegious defilement of my sacred temple by my notoriously impulsive uncle on her divine agenda for the day. It's the kind of unplanned event that would disrupt even a goddess's carefully laid out cosmic schedule. If divine internal affairs departments were a thing back then, Poseidon would be facing more than just a strongly worded memo delivered by a very irate owl. He'd likely be looking at some serious divine sanctions. Perhaps mandatory attendance at an understanding consent in sacred spaces workshop. But for now, that divine fury is a palpable thing coiling in the ether. And it's not Poseidon who is cowering in its path. The immediate victim of his transgression, Medusa, is the one left in the desecrated silence, soon to face the consequences of a crime she did not commit, but which has irrevocably marked her and the sacred ground she stood upon. The air in Athena's temple is no longer still. It's electric, thrumming with a power that makes the very stones around you vibrate and your teeth ache. The gathered storm of Athena's fury is about to break. You, as Medusa, are caught in its epicenter, a tiny, fragile figure in the face of unimaginable divine wrath. Perhaps Athena herself doesn't deign to appear in her radiant, terrifying glory. Her power is such that her mere focused attention, her divine displeasure, is enough to reshape reality within her sacred space. A blinding, cold light might fill the sanctuary, a light that doesn't illuminate but rather seems to absorb all warmth, all hope, casting harsh, elongated shadows that writhe like accusing fingers. Or maybe you just feel an immense, crushing weight, the goddess's disapproval pressing down on you, stealing your breath, making your heart hammer against your ribs like a trapped bird. There are no pleas from you that can alter what is to come, no desperate bargains or whispered prayers that can turn aside the cold, hard edge of Olympian justice, or what passes for it. Athena's judgment is delivered, not perhaps in spoken words that echo through the marble hall, but in a wave of transformative energy, a divine decree made manifest. In the eyes of the goddess, her temple has been irredeemably defiled. Her priestess, the vessel of that defilement, is now a living symbol of the sacrilege. The stain must be dealt with. Purity, in Athena's uncompromising view, must be restored, even if that restoration means obliteration of what was once beautiful and innocent. Curses in Greek mythology, you must understand, were not mere angry words. They were potent, binding forces, often with inescapable and far-reaching consequences, reflecting a deep-seated belief in the power of divine retribution and the contagious nature of miasma or ritual pollution. Once marked by such a stain, an individual or even a place was considered tainted, an object of dread and avoidance. And so, the transformation begins. It's a terrifying, agonizing metamorphosis, a divine fury reshaping your very essence. Your beautiful hair, that cascade of shimmering silk once admired by mortals and gods alike, starts to writhe and twist with a horrifying life of its own. You feel it, a sickening crawl upon your scalp as each strand thickens, coarsens, and elongates, the tips hissing and splitting into serpentine heads with flickering tongues and cold, jeweled eyes. They coil and uncoil around your face, their weight growing, their dry, scaly bodies brushing against your terror-widened eyes. Medusa always wanted a striking new hairstyle, a look that would turn heads, but writhing, venomous snakes probably weren't what her stylist, or indeed anyone, had in mind. Your skin, once smooth and radiant, a testament to youth and vitality, now feels cold, tight, and strangely alien. Perhaps it takes on a ghastly, greenish pallor or becomes mottled and scaled like that of a reptile, an outward sign of the monstrous change within. Your limbs might feel heavy, clumsy, your graceful movements replaced by something more ancient, more predatory. And your eyes, oh, your eyes, once windows to a gentle soul, they now burn with a new, horrifying power. You feel a cold fire ignite within them, a petrifying force that you can't control, a gaze that will turn living flesh to cold, unyielding stone. Imagine that first. Dawning awareness, the horror of realizing that your mere glance can extinguish life, can freeze joy and warmth into an eternal, silent scream. This isn't just a physical alteration. It's a deep, spiritual unmaking and remaking. The gentle priestess is dying, and in her place, a Gorgon is being born. Some ancient tales and depictions of Gorgons give them other terrifying features beyond the famous snake hair and deadly gaze, perhaps great, beating wings like those of a monstrous bird, or sharp boar's tusks curling from their lips, or even brazen claws capable of tearing through flesh and stone. The specifics vary, but the essence is the same. You are becoming a creature of terror, an object of loathing, destined for a life of horrifying isolation. Your mortality, once a fragile human certainty, might now be stripped away, replaced by the dreadful, unending existence of a monster. When the transformation is complete, when every vestige of your former self has been horrifically scoured away and replaced by this new, terrible form, perhaps Athena's oppressive presence recedes. The cold light fades, the crushing weight lifts, leaving behind an echoing silence in the now doubly desecrated temple. In her divine eyes, justice has been served, the pollution contained, and perhaps, in a twisted way, even given a form that will serve as a perpetual warning to others. The symbolism of Medusa's specific transformation, particularly the snake hair and the petrifying gaze, is a rich and deeply fascinating area of scholarly debate, with interpretations ranging from symbols of potent female rage and terrifying, untamed power to apotropaic imagery designed to ward off evil, or even complex allegories for the fear of female beauty and agency. But for you, Medusa, there are no scholarly comforts. There is only the cold, hard reality of what you have become. Alone in the silent, shadowed temple, you raise a trembling, now claw-like hand to your head, feeling the dry, slithering weight of the serpents that are now your crown. You catch a glimpse of your reflection in a polished shield left carelessly by some long-gone devotee, and a new kind of scream, a sound not quite human, tears from your throat. On the bright side, if one could even call it that, you'll probably have no more trouble with unwanted advances from gods or mortals. On the downside, You'll also have no more, well, anything else that once defined a human life. Athena's idea of restoring order really could have used a peer review process, and perhaps a mandatory course in compassionate justice. For now, the curse is absolute. The Gorgon is born, and the world has gained another monster, a tragedy given terrifying form. The Gorgon is born, a terrifying monument to divine rage and tragic circumstance, her story now a whispered warning in a mortal world. And as with all such profound terrors, as with all such seemingly insurmountable darkness, the threads of fate, or perhaps the meddling hands of the gods, begin to weave a counter-narrative, a glimmer of what the world often desperately calls a hero. So let us gently turn our gaze from the desolate, cursed figure of Medusa, for now, and travel across the wine-dark sea, to the sun-drenched shores of the island of Seriphos, where another destiny is taking shape. Here, you meet a young man named Perseus. His own beginnings are steeped in the kind of high drama only the Olympians could truly orchestrate. His mother was Danae, a princess of Argos. Her father, King Acrisius, received a chilling prophecy from an oracle, one of those famously ambiguous and usually spot-on predictions that Greek mortals so loved and feared. This particular gem foretold that Acrisius would be killed by his own grandson. Oracles in ancient Greece, such as the renowned Oracle of Delphi, where the Pythia breathed vapors and uttered Apollo's cryptic pronouncements, held immense sway. Their words could launch wars, found cities, and, as in this case, set in motion desperate attempts to escape fate. Attempts which, with delightful irony, usually ensured the prophecy came true. Acrisius, understandably keen to avoid this particular family reunion, promptly locked Danae away in a bronze tower, or by some accounts a subterranean chamber, hoping to keep her from any potential grandson-producing encounters. For effort, Acrisius, but he clearly underestimated the resourcefulness and the sheer audacity of Zeus, king of the gods. Zeus, never one to be deterred by minor inconveniences like impenetrable bronze towers when a beautiful mortal caught his eye, simply visited Danae as a shower of golden rain, flowing through the roof, and, 9 months later, baby Perseus arrived. Acrisius, presumably after a rather epic facepalm, was still determined to dodge his destiny. Not wanting the direct guilt of filicide, killing one's own offspring, or in this case, grandson, he had Danae and the infant Perseus placed in a sturdy wooden chest and cast out into the turbulent sea. You could just imagine them, mother and child, tossed by the waves. The only lullaby the creak of wood and the roar of the ocean. But fate, or perhaps Zeus, keeping a distant paternal eye on things, guided their makeshift vessel to the shores of the island of Seriphos. There, they were found and kindly taken in by a fisherman named Dictys, a good, honest man who happened to be the brother of the island's king, Polydectes. So, Perseus grows from a babe to a young man on Seriphos, with the scent of salt and fish in his nostrils. The sound of the Aegean his constant companion. He's strong, brave, and fiercely protective of his mother, Danae, who, unfortunately for her, has caught the unwanted attention of King Polydectes. Polydectes is a far cry from his kind brother Dictys. He's arrogant, entitled, and determined to have Danae for himself, whether she's willing or not. Perseus, naturally, stands in his way. Polydectes, clearly a graduate from the Villainous Schemes 101 night school, where they probably teach modules on manipulating prophecies for personal gain and creative ways to dispose of pesky stepchildren-to-be, hatches a cunning plan to remove the young hero from the picture. The king announces a grand feast, a Erinos, where all notable men of the island are expected to contribute a gift, traditionally a horse, to help him gather a bride price for a supposed upcoming marriage to another noble woman, a clever ruse, of course. Perseus, being a poor fisherman's ward, has no horse to give. At the feast, surrounded by wealthier, mocking guests, and feeling the sting of his poverty and perhaps Polydectes' pointed taunts, Perseus makes a rash, youthful boast. "I may not have a horse," you can hear him declare, his voice ringing with a mixture of pride and frustration, "but I can bring you any other gift you name. Even, and here's where things take a legendary turn, even the head of a Gorgon." The concept of a hero's boast, or euchos, was a common motif in ancient epic literature. While it could certainly lead to precarious situations, as it does here, it also served to establish a hero's ambition, their commitment to achieving extraordinary, seemingly impossible deeds, and perhaps to call upon the gods to witness their resolve. Polydectes, his eyes gleaming with malicious satisfaction, immediately seizes upon this. "Excellent, Perseus," he might have sneered, a cruel smile playing on his lips. "A truly heroic gift. And not just any Gorgon, mind you. I want the head of Medusa, the only one of an unholy trinity of sisters who is mortal, the one whose gaze, they say, turns men to stone." The king, of course, fully expects Perseus to fail, to perish in this impossible quest, leaving Danae vulnerable to his advances. The degree to which Greek heroes like Perseus were truly masters of their own destiny, forging their paths through sheer will and courage, versus being intricate pawns moved by the grand designs of fate or the whims of divine will, is a recurring theme in their mythology. Scholars often debate the extent of their agency, particularly when their actions seem to directly fulfill or, paradoxically, result from attempts to subvert long foretold prophecies. So, there you are, as Perseus, young, brave, with a divine spark from your Olympian father, but also undeniably cornered. Your to-do list for the foreseeable future now reads something like: 1. Figure out what a Gorgon actually is and where on Earth, or beyond it, these creatures reside. 2. Discover which one is Medusa. 3. Approach said Medusa without becoming an impromptu garden statue. 4. Engage in mortal combat with a being of unimaginable terror. 5. Sever her head. 6. And then somehow transport said head, which is probably still fairly cursed with a capital C, all the way back to Seriphos. Easy peasy, right? What could possibly go wrong? You can almost see Perseus, after the initial bravado wears off, sitting on a rock by the shore, skipping stones and thinking, well, that escalated quickly. He probably updated his relationship status with Polydectes on his wax tablet to "it's complicated," and started discreetly asking around for travel advice to an undisclosed, highly dangerous, and probably very unpleasant monster lair. The weight of the quest is immense. The odds overwhelmingly stacked against you. But your love for your mother, your desire to protect her from Polydectes' vile intentions, burns fiercely within you. And perhaps, deep down, there's also that spark of heroic destiny, that whisper from your divine heritage that tells you this impossible task is, somehow, yours to undertake. You are, after all, a son of Zeus. And sons of Zeus, as a general rule, don't do things by halves, nor are they usually left entirely to their own devices when facing down doom. The gods, it seems, enjoy a good heroic struggle, especially when they have a personal stake in the hero. You stand there, Perseus, a young man bound by a rash boast and a king's cruel whim, the weight of an impossible quest settling upon your strong, yet mortal, shoulders. The salty air of Seriphos suddenly feels colder, the familiar cry of gulls more like a lament. How does one even begin to find a monster whose lair is a secret whispered only in nightmares? Let alone slay her when a single glance means a stony, permanent end to all your heroic aspirations? But remember, you are a son of Zeus. And while the king of the gods himself might be too busy with his various Olympian affairs to offer direct assistance, other divine relatives often take a keen interest in their kin, especially when a truly epic adventure is brewing. And so, as you perhaps sit by the shore, pondering your exceedingly grim future and idly wondering if Polydectes accepts returns on impossible quests, a new presence makes itself known. There's a shift in the light, a sudden clarity in the air, as if the sun has decided to focus its brightest beam directly on you. Before you stands Athena, goddess of wisdom, warfare, and crafty solutions. She appears not as a terrifying, wrathful deity, but perhaps in a more approachable guise, a tall, serene woman with eyes that seem to hold all the knowledge of the world. Her expression serious, but not unkind. She, after all, has a vested interest. Medusa, her former priestess, is now a blight she herself created, and that monstrous head, if it could be safely obtained, would become an apotropaic weapon of immense power. Plus, Athena always did have a soft spot for a promising hero. So, she might say, her voice calm and resonant as a temple bell. You've gotten yourself into a bit of a bind, haven't you, son of Zeus? Slaying a Gorgon isn't exactly a stroll through the olive groves. Athena, ever the divine guidance counselor, basically outlines that to get to the final boss, Medusa, you first need to complete a few rather challenging side quests. Ancient Greek heroic narratives. It turns out we're quite fond of the multi-stage fetch quest. Your first task, she advises, is to find the Grace sisters, for they alone know the path to the nymphs of the north, or Stygian nymphs, who are the guardians of certain essential magical accessories you'll be needing. Almost as if on cue, another figure shimmers into existence beside Athena. It's Hermes, the fleet-footed messenger of the gods, patron of travelers, thieves, and generally getting into and out of tricky situations. He has a jaunty air about him, a twinkle in his eye, perhaps offering you a celestial fist bump. He's your half-brother, also a son of Zeus, and always up for an adventure, especially one that involves outwitting fate or annoying other deities. Hermes, practical as ever, comes bearing a gift. He presents you with a magnificent curved sword, or harp, its blade forged from adamantine, the mythical, unbreakable metal of the gods. This, he might explain with a grin, should be sharp enough to deal with even the toughest of monstrous necks. Try not to lose it. Divine intervention, you see, was a cornerstone of Greek epic poetry and mythology. The gods frequently and directly assisted their favored heroes, providing them with crucial advice, enchanted weapons, or timely rescues, thereby highlighting the deeply interconnected and often codependent relationship between the divine and mortal realms. Armed with Athena's counsel and Hermes' formidable blade, your path is now slightly less impossible, though still dauntingly vague. You need to find these Athena, with her typical strategic foresight, also offers you a crucial piece of advice on how to persuade these ancient sisters to part with their secrets. A plan involving a bit of cunning theft, which Hermes probably applauds with gusto. The gods, it seems, aren't above a bit of light larceny when it serves a heroic purpose. Let's imagine for a moment that you successfully navigate that particular encounter. We'll get to the charming details of the Gree in due course. You compel them to reveal the location of the nymphs. These nymphs, when you finally reach their hidden, idyllic grove, turn out to be quite generous, if perhaps a little starstruck by a hero on a divine mission. They bestow upon you 3 more invaluable gifts. First, a pair of winged sandals, much like the ones Hermes himself often wears, allowing you to flit through the air with the speed of thought. Second, they give you the cap of Hades, also known as the Helm of Darkness or the Pegasus, though that term is also used for the bag. Once donned, this cap renders you utterly invisible to mortal and immortal eyes alike. And third, they provide a special reinforced wallet or satchel, also often called the Pegasus, specifically designed to safely contain Medusa's head after you've acquired it. This isn't just any old bag. As a quirky little detail that shows the practicalities of magical monster slaying. The Pegasus is sometimes described in ancient lore as being made of materials that could neutralize or contain the still potent petrifying power of the severed head. A sort of ancient Greek biohazard containment unit for the divinely cursed. Finally, before sending you on your way, Athena offers one last, critical piece of equipment and advice. She presents you with a brightly polished bronze shield, so reflective it's like a mirror. Or in some versions, she instructs you on how to use your own shield in such a manner. When you face Medusa, she warns, her gray eyes glinting. You must not look at her directly. Observe her only through this reflection. Her gaze is death, even for a son of Zeus, if met head-on. The exact nature and mythological origins of some of these potent magical items, such as the Cap of Hades which grants invisibility, are subject to ongoing scholarly debate. Some scholars suggest these artifacts might be symbolic representations of shamanistic abilities, or that their motifs were borrowed from even older Near Eastern or Indo-European mythologies, gradually incorporated and adapted into the fabric of Greek heroic tales. So there you stand, Perseus, suddenly looking less like a doomed youth and more like a divinely sponsored special operative. You've got your adamantine sword, your winged kicks, your invisibility hat, your Gorgon head go-bag, and your life-saving mirror shield. Perseus, now looking like a high-end divine delivery service courier with all this magical gear, must have felt a bit like he'd received a flat-pack hero kit with the instructions, some assembly required. Divine intervention sold separately, but included in this instance. With invisibility, super speed flight, a magic sword, and a special bag for your ghastly trophy. You are essentially the ancient Greek equivalent of a superhero, minus the spandex and the tragic backstory involving a bat cave, though a very different and far more dangerous kind of cave is definitely in your and Medusa's immediate future. You are empowered, yes, but the chilling weight of your task, the sheer terror of what you must face, is no less real. Section 7. And so, you are equipped, Perseus, a fledgling hero armed with an assortment of quite frankly astonishing divine party favors. The weight of them, the cool, unyielding adamantine of the sickle, the whisper-light pressure of the cap of Hades on your brow, the eager thrum of the winged sandals already tugging at your ankles, is both a comfort and a constant, chilling reminder of the lethality of your quest, the chilling weight of your task. The sheer terror of what you must face is no less real. But now, at least, you have a fighting chance. Or, more accurately, a not looking directly at your opponent and hoping for the best chance. Your first objective, as per Athena's strategic council, is to locate the Grii, the three Grace sisters, ancient beings who predate many of the Olympians and are said to be the keepers of certain obscure and vital secrets. With a deep breath, you slip on the winged sandals. There's a strange, exhilarating lightness, and then, with a tentative kick, you are airborne. The island of Seriphos shrinks rapidly below you, its familiar shores and King Polydectes' smug face becoming distant memories. You soar through the vast, open sky, the wind whipping past your ears. Clouds like fluffy white islands in an endless blue ocean. The world unfolds beneath you, a tapestry of mountains, forests, and shimmering seas. This is a perspective few mortals ever experience. A dizzying, godlike freedom. The ancient Greeks often conceived of their known world, the oikumene, as a relatively compact disk centered around the Mediterranean. But beyond its familiar edges lay mysterious, uncharted territories, the liminal spaces where myth and reality blurred. It is towards one such far-flung, desolate edge of the world that your winged sandals now carry you. After what feels like an age of silent, arrow-straight flight, the landscape below begins to change. The vibrant greens and blues give way to a palette of somber grays and muted browns. The air grows colder, the light dimmer, as if you've flown into a realm of perpetual twilight. This is the land of the Grii, a place forgotten by the sun. You alight softly, the cap of Hades pulled firmly over your head, rendering you as invisible as a thought. Before you, perhaps at the mouth of a windswept, craggy cave, or huddled on a barren, rocky plain, you find them. Inio, meaning warlike or horror, Dano, dread or terrible, and Pemfredo, she who shows the way, or alarm. They are ancient beyond imagining, their forms withered and stooped, their skin like old parchment, and their long hair the color of ash, gray from the very moment of their birth. And, most unsettlingly, they share amongst themselves but a single, gleaming eye and one solitary tooth. Passing these precious items back and forth with slow, fumbling movements. Some obscure ancient commentaries or scholiasts, those meticulous annotators of old texts, even whisper that the gree were swan-shaped or possessed other strange, hybrid features, making them even more uncanny guardians of the world's hidden pathways and its esoteric knowledge. You watch, invisible and silent, as they go about their strange, shared existence. One sister, having used the eye to peer into the gloom, carefully removes it and begins to pass it to another, her hand trembling with age, her voice a dry, rustling whisper. "Here, sister, take the sight. Tell me if you perceive any change in our dreary world." The Gree's daily routine, if you could call it that, must have been a logistical nightmare of epic proportions. Whose turn is it for the eye today? Dano, did you remember to polish it? Pemfredo, please don't misplace the tooth again. It took us a week to find it under that rock last time. It's a scene both grotesque and faintly pathetic. Now is your moment. As the eye is suspended in mid-air, halfway between one sister's outstretched, grasping hand and another's sightless, waiting socket, you reach out, your invisible fingers, guided by a prayer to Hermes for a bit of trickster's luck, close around the surprisingly smooth, moist orb. You snatch it away. Chaos erupts. Three quavering, ancient voices rise in a chorus of confusion and dismay. The eye. Where is the eye? Sister, did you drop it? I can't see. Who has taken our sight? They stumble and grope blindly in the dim light, their claw-like hands flailing, their faces masks of helpless terror. Now you speak, your voice amplified slightly by some trick of the cap or the desolate acoustics, sounding like a disembodied spirit. I have your eye, ancient ones, you declare, and I will return it, only when you tell me what I need to know. The path to the nymphs of the north, those who guard the treasures I seek for my quest against Medusa. There's a desperate, whispered conference, and then, reluctantly, they spill the secret, their words like dry leaves skittering across stone, giving you the precise, arcane directions to the hidden grove of these particular nymphs. True to your word, once the information is yours, you carefully place the eye back into one of their trembling, outstretched hands. There's no need for cruelty beyond what is necessary for your quest. With the nymph's location secured, you bid a swift farewell to the land of eternal twilight. Your winged sandals carry you onward, perhaps to a surprisingly verdant, sun-dappled oasis hidden deep within some northern wilderness where the nymphs, as detailed before, joyfully bestow upon you the cap of invisibility, the Pegasus bag, and confirm your possession of the winged sandals themselves. As some versions say, these two came from them directly. Perseus, now fully kitted out thanks to this chain of divine and semi-divine assistance, probably racked up some serious frequent flyer miles across the ancient mythological world. No tiresome airport security to worry about, at least, though a distinct lack of in-flight snacks. And then, the final leg of this particular journey begins. From a nymph's pleasant sanctuary, you fly towards an even more remote and dreaded destination, the lair of the Gorgons. The very air seems to grow heavy, tainted with an ancient dread. The landscape below becomes barren, lifeless, a sun-bleached desert or a craggy, volcanic wasteland. The exact geographical location of the Gorgon's lair is a point of much speculation in ancient texts and by modern scholars. Often poetically placed in the farthest, uncharted west, near the great river Oceanus that encircled the world, or sometimes in the harsh deserts of Libya or other similarly mythical, inaccessible regions, all symbolizing its profound remoteness from the lands of the living and the civilized order. As you draw nearer, an unnatural silence falls. No verzin, no insectum, and then you begin to see them, Strange, weather-beaten statues scattered across the desolate terrain. Figures of men, frozen in attitudes of terror, their faces contorted, their limbs twisted. Animals, too. A hunting dog mid-snarl, a wild goat poised to leap, all turned to cold, unyielding stone. Each one is a silent, petrified testament to Medusa's horrifying power. A grim welcome to her domain. You know you're in a truly bad neighborhood when all the lawn ornaments are former heroes and overly curious wildlife. Probably not a place that gets many door-to-door salespeople, or indeed, any visitors who plan on leaving with their circulatory system still functioning. The path to stone gazes is nearing its dreadful end. The path to stone gazes has led you here, Perseus, to the very doorstep of unimaginable terror. You stand at the threshold of the Gorgon's lair, the air thick with a silence that's far more terrifying than any scream. Around you, the grotesque statues of heroes, adventurers, and unfortunate wildlife stand as a frozen, silent, welcoming committee, their faces eternally locked in expressions of ultimate horror. Each one is a chilling reminder of the penalty for a single direct glance at the creature you have come to slay. This, you think with a dry swallow, is definitely not a place that gets high ratings on ancient travel scrolls. Probably a lot of one-star reviews. Atmosphere a bit stiff. Decor a tad repetitive. Would not visit again. Drawing a deep, steadying breath, you ensure the cap of Hades is pulled down tight, cloaking you in the comforting embrace of invisibility. The entrance to the lair looms before you, perhaps a gaping, shadowy fissure in a mountainside, its edges like broken teeth or the crumbling, vine-choked ruins of some forgotten, cyclopean temple. Caves and grottos in the ancient world, you recall, were often considered deeply significant liminal spaces. They were seen as natural openings to the mysterious underworld, the dwelling places of oracles, nymphs, and sometimes, as in this delightful case, decidedly unfriendly monstrous beings. Their inherent darkness and echoing depths lent themselves perfectly to such eerie associations, making them the ideal setting for a creature whose very glance means death. You slip inside, your winged sandals making no sound on the damp, uneven floor. The air within is cold, stagnant, and carries a faint, reptilian musk mixed with the dry scent of old bones and something else, something metallic and unsettling, like ancient despair. Your eyes, straining in the gloom, gradually begin to make out the vast, cavernous space. And then you see them. Not Medusa, not yet, but her two immortal sisters, Athena and Euryale. They are colossal, terrifying figures, even in repose. Perhaps one is slumped against a rock, her great, leathery wings, for some tales do grant them wings, folded awkwardly, her brazen claws idly scratching at the stone. The other might be pacing slowly, restlessly, her own head a smaller, but no less venomous, tangle of hissing serpents. While Medusa is the most famous for her petrifying gaze, a unique curse laid upon her, her sisters Athena, the mighty, and Euryale, the far springer, were also formidable monsters in their own right. Some ancient depictions or obscure literary fragments give them features like impenetrable scales, sharp boar's tusks, and those powerful wings, emphasizing their raw, untamed, and decidedly immortal monstrousness. They are a truly terrifying family unit, and you know you must avoid them at all costs. Your adamantine sickle is meant for a mortal neck, not these two indestructible nightmares. You move with infinite caution, a silent, invisible prayer on your lips, tiptoeing past Athena, who seems to be muttering in her sleep. Something that sounds suspiciously like more heroes, crunchy. Then you edge around Euryale, whose own snake hair seems to twitch and hiss in your unseen direction, as if sensing a disturbance in their charnel house. It's like trying to sneak that last cookie from the jar when there are two very large, very angry, and very immortal guard dogs made of pure, concentrated nightmare fuel also in the kitchen, and they haven't had their breakfast yet. Every rustle of your tunic, every tiny pebble dislodged by your foot, sound like a thunderclap in the oppressive silence. And then, in a deeper recess of the cavern, lit by a faint, eerie luminescence that seems to emanate from strange, phosphorescent fungi clinging to the damp walls, you see her. Medusa. She is asleep, her form sprawled on a bed of dried leaves and what looks disturbingly like tattered, ancient tapestries. Even in slumber, she is a figure of dreadful power. The nest of serpents that is her hair writhes slowly, constantly, 100 tiny, independent movements, their faint, collective hissing a sibilant, unceasing lullaby of death. This is it, the culmination of your journey, the target of Polydectes' cruel demand, the tragic creature whose end will, you hope, free your mother. Remembering Athena's solemn warning, you dare not look directly. Instead, you raise the brightly polished bronze shield the goddess provided. Your heart hammers against your ribs. It's one thing to hear the plan. It's quite another to try and fight a monster using only its reflection in a wobbly, handheld mirror, especially when said monster can turn you into a garden gnome with a single look. The specific and rather ingenious tactic of using a reflective surface against Medusa is a brilliant narrative device, highlighting cleverness over brute force. However, scholars continue to debate whether this is a later, popularizing addition to the myth by storytellers seeking a more dramatic and cunning resolution, or if it was an original element, perhaps symbolizing an indirect confrontation with overwhelming terror, or even a deeper psychological metaphor for confronting one's own inner demons and fears without being directly consumed by them. You angle the shield, your knuckles white as you grip its handle. In its gleaming, slightly distorted surface, she appears, a terrifying, sleeping visage. The snakes coil and uncoil, their tiny, pitiless eyes like chips of obsidian. You can see the curve of her pale cheek, the unnatural stillness of her form, save for that constantly moving crown of horrors. The tension is almost unbearable. You make a tiny, involuntary movement, perhaps a scuff of your sandal, or maybe one of her snakes, more alert than the others, simply senses your alien presence. Medusa stirs. Her snakes become more agitated, a louder, more urgent hissing filling the cavern. Then, her eyes, even in the reflection, snap open. They're not human eyes. They glow with a faint, sickly greenish light, promising instant petrification. You see the reflection of her face turn towards your reflected self, her expression not yet fully awake, but already filled with a monstrous awareness. Medusa's morning alarm clock is probably just the collective, frantic hissing of several dozen very agitated snakes on her head. It definitely ensures she doesn't hit the snooze button too many times. You can only imagine her personal space issues were legendary. One direct look from those eyes, and you were quite literally stuck on her, or at least near her forever. The reflected gaze meets yours in the bronze. Your breath catches. This is the moment of truth. Every instinct screams at you to look away, to flee. But you hold steady, your eyes fixed on that deadly image in the shield, your hand tightening on the hilt of the adamantine sickle. The confrontation has begun. The confrontation is joined, your reflection battling hers in the polished bronze of Athena's shield. Your heart is a frantic drum against your ribs, every nerve screaming, but your arm, guided by divine will and a desperate resolve to save your mother, is steady. This is no time for hesitation, no moment for second thoughts. With all the strength and speed you possess, you lunge forward, your eyes still locked on that deadly, beautiful, horrifying reflection. The adamantine sickle, gifted by Hermes, feels like an extension of your own will, impossibly sharp, anciently powerful. It whistles through the stale air of the cavern, a sliver of divine retribution aimed true. There's no clang of metal on stone, no gruesome, protracted struggle. Guided by the unwavering image in your shield, the sickle makes contact. A swift, sure stroke, clean, decisive, and final. The head of Medusa, with its writhing crown of serpents, is severed. Her monstrous body collapses to the cavern floor with a sound like falling rocks, a strange, shuddering sigh escaping her lips as the last vestiges of her cursed existence depart. The snakes in her hair perhaps give one last, convulsive writhe, then fall still, their malevolent gleam extinguished. You've done it. The impossible task. Medusa, the mortal Gorgon, is slain. But before you can even draw a breath of relief, before the enormity of your deed can fully register, something utterly astonishing, something beyond all mortal comprehension, occurs. From the place where Medusa's head was severed, from the dark, pooling blood that soaks into the ancient stone, there is a sudden, brilliant eruption of divine light. And from this confluence of monstrous death and divine essence, two beings spring forth, fully formed, into the startled air of the cavern. First, a creature of such breathtaking beauty and purity, it seems impossible it could originate from such a violent end. It is a horse, yes, but like no horse ever seen in the mortal realm. His coat is the purest white, like freshly fallen snow on Mount Olympus, his mane and tail like spun moonlight, and from his powerful shoulders unfurl a pair of magnificent feathered wings, vast and strong, that beat the air with a sound like rushing wind or the rustle of 1,000 doves taking flight. This is Pegasus, the winged steed, a symbol of poetic inspiration, of soaring freedom, and of untamed, ethereal grace. Miraculous or unusual births, you see, are a common theme in Greek mythology, often signifying a hero's or a creature's special divine parentage or preordained, extraordinary destiny. Pegasus, as the offspring of Poseidon, his essence implanted in Medusa long ago, now finally released through this violent birth, perfectly fits this pattern. His emergence is a testament to his father's lordship over horses and the often unpredictable and frankly bizarre ways the gods' influence manifests in the world. Talk about an unexpected delivery. No storks or cabbage patches involved here, just a very sharp divine sword and a very surprised hero. Definitely not your average childbirth story, even by Olympian standards. But Pegasus is not alone. Alongside him, or perhaps a heartbeat later, another figure bursts forth from the same miraculous origin. This is Chrysaor, whose name means he of the golden sword. He is often depicted as a powerful warrior, a young giant. Chrysaor is an equally significant product of this strange, divine event. As a quirky, often overlooked tidbit, Chrysaor's name and his signature golden sword might symbolically link him to concepts of wealth, power, or kingship in ancient lore. He doesn't just fade into obscurity. He goes on to father other notable, and sometimes monstrous, figures in mythology, including the three-bodied giant Geryon, whom Heracles would later encounter. So, he's not merely a footnote to Pegasus's birth, but the progenitor of his own distinct and often formidable lineage. You, Perseus, stand there amidst the carnage and this sudden, overwhelming creation, utterly dumbfounded. One moment you were a monster slayer, the next you're an accidental midwife to a pair of mythological celebrities. Perseus probably didn't have witnessed twin miracle birth from a monster's neck during high-stakes decapitation on his pre-quest checklist, but ancient Greek myths, as you're rapidly discovering, are absolutely packed with startling surprises and feature some very, very strange biology. The commotion, the flash of divine light, the sudden appearance of two new, powerful beings, has not gone unnoticed. From the deeper shadows of the lair, guttural roars of fury and grief echo. Athena and Euryale, Medusa's immortal sisters, are now fully awake, and they are incandescent with rage at the death of their sibling. Their monstrous forms are barreling towards you, brazen claws extended, their remaining snake hair practically vibrating with fury. There's no time for astounded contemplation. With frantic haste, you remember your final, crucial task. You snatch up the cabesus, the special bag given to you by the nymphs. Carefully averting your gaze completely, you seize Medusa's severed head by its coiling. Now inert snakes, though inert is a relative term when dealing with cursed Gorgon heads, and thrust it into the bag, pulling the drawstrings tight. The exact nature of the life force or divine essence that allowed Pegasus and Chrysaor to spring so dramatically from Medusa's blood, especially considering her cursed and monstrous state, is a fascinating subject of mythological interpretation. Scholars continue to debate whether this miraculous generation represents the lingering, potent divine seed of Poseidon finally finding release, a manifestation of chthonic earth power reacting to the spilling of potent blood on sacred ground, or perhaps a more profound symbolic transformation of destructive, monstrous energy into new, creative forms, one beautiful and inspirational, the other martial and kingly. But there's no time for you to ponder such mythological intricacies now. The two remaining Gorgons are almost upon you. Time to fly, you think quite literally. You pull the cap of Hades firmly onto your head, vanishing from their sight. Pegasus, with a mighty beat of his new wings, soars upwards, finding an unseen fissure in the cavern roof and bursting out into the unknown world. Chrysaor, golden sword flashing, makes his own equally swift and determined exit, perhaps through another passage. Eager to carve out his own destiny, you are left to make your own escape, leaving the two enraged, immortal Gorgons to shriek their frustration and grief into the defiled emptiness of their lair, probably already composing a very strongly worded complaint to the Olympian hero support line. Our sister was brutally slain in her own home, and then, to add insult to injury, two completely random beings just popped out her neck. Highly unprofessional conduct for a supposed hero. We demand a full inquiry. While you, Perseus, are making your narrow, invisible escape from the Gorgon's lair, the air still vibrating with the enraged shrieks of Stheno and Euryale. Let's turn our sleepy gaze to one of the miraculous beings just born from that very chaos. Chrysaor, of the golden sword, has already charged off into the world, a warrior keen to forge his own legends. But Pegasus, the magnificent winged horse, takes a different path. He has burst forth from the darkness of the cavern, not towards further conflict, but upwards into the vast, open sky, drawn by an instinct as deep and pure as his own ethereal being. Imagine him, if you will, in those first few moments. He stands, perhaps, at the jagged mouth of that desolate cave, the grim, petrified statues of Medusa's victims receding into the shadows behind him. Before him lies the world, bathed in the clear light of dawn, or perhaps the soft, silvery glow of a full moon, depending on when you, Perseus, timed your heroic intrusion. He shakes his glorious, snow-white mane, the scent of the underworld and his violent birth already beginning to fade, replaced by the clean, crisp air of the upper world. His great, intelligent eyes, perhaps the color of deep sapphires or warm amber, take in the panorama of this new existence. And then he feels the incredible power coiled within his strong young limbs. The latent strength in those magnificent, feathered wings that adorn his shoulders. There's no hesitation, no awkward first attempts. Flight is as natural to him as breathing. With a mighty, joyous whinny that echoes across the silent, barren landscape, he leaps. His powerful hind legs propel him upwards, and then those vast wings, white as sea foam, catch the air, beating down with a sound like the unfurling of a giant sail. He rises effortlessly, leaving the place of his dark nativity far below. Pegasus, taking his very first flight, probably didn't need any pre-flight checklist from ground crew, no air traffic control clearance from Olympus. Just pure, unadulterated, instinctive I have wings, and this sky looks like fun. You are there with him, soaring, feeling the exhilarating rush of wind against your face, the incredible sensation of freedom. The ground, that desolate, Gorgon-haunted wasteland, shrinks with astonishing speed. He climbs higher and higher, above the jagged peaks and shadowed valleys, into the boundless expanse of the heavens. The world unfolds beneath him like a giant, living map. Rugged indigo mountains capped with mist, dark, sprawling forests like patches of deep green velvet, and the shimmering, wine-dark expanse of the sea, its surface kissed by the rising sun or glittering with reflected starlight. Horses in ancient Greece, as you might know, were highly prized. They were symbols of status, wealth, and essential assets in warfare, often linked with heroes, nobility, and even gods like his own father, Poseidon. Winged creatures in any mythology naturally symbolize transcendence, a connection to the divine, the ability to carry messages between worlds, or simply ultimate freedom. Pegasus, in his glorious form, embodies the pinnacle of both these potent symbolisms, the strength and nobility of the horse, combined with the sublime liberty of flight. He flies on, not with any specific destination in mind just yet, but purely for the joy of it, for the sheer wonder of movement and discovery. He is a creature of air and light, a living embodiment of beauty and untamed grace emerging from a tale of darkness and a tragic curse. He circles and soars, his powerful wing beats carrying him over slumbering fishing villages nestled in coastal coves, past remote, mist-wreathed islands where perhaps only nymphs or minor sea deities reside. While Pegasus is undoubtedly the most famous winged horse in all of mythology, it's a quirky little thought that Greek folklore and art did feature other, though lesser-known, winged creatures or beings associated with flight, like the Boreads, the winged twin sons of Boreas, the north wind, who could zip through the sky on their father's business. Or even some ancient depictions of sphinxes and griffins with particularly prominent and powerful wings, all showcasing a deep human fascination with the concept of aerial mobility and the creatures that might possess it. But none, surely, could match the pure, breathtaking elegance of Pegasus on this. His maiden voyage. As he flies, perhaps he feels a pull, an innate guidance towards a place that resonates with his own pure spirit. Many myths connect him, very early in his existence, with Mount Helicon, the sacred mountain abode of the nine muses, the goddesses of poetry, art, and science. It is not uniformly detailed in all ancient sources quite when or why Pegasus first sought out Mount Helicon and the delightful company of the muses. This has led to some gentle, scholarly debate about whether this significant association was an intrinsic, original part of his mythos, perhaps due to his innate purity attracting him to such a place, or if it was a later, lovely development by poets and artists who, quite understandably, sought a suitably divine and inspiring patron for their creative endeavors. And what could be more inspiring than a flying horse born of myth? For now, imagine him alighting, after his exhilarating journey, on a peaceful, sun-dappled slope of such a mountain. The air here is clear and sweet, filled with the scent of wild thyme and mountain laurel, the distant sound of lyres and harmonious voices drifting on the breeze. He has found a sanctuary, a place of beauty that mirrors his own nature. He is a creature of a new dawning, untainted by the tragedy of his mother, Medusa, a symbol that even from great darkness, incredible light and beauty can spring forth. Imagine the other, more conventional birds of the air witnessing Pegasus for the very first time. Sparrows and swallows probably just stopped mid-chirp, their tiny bird brains trying to process the sheer audacity of a horse casually owning their entire aerial domain. Right, Harold. One might have twittered to another, that's it. We're officially outclassed in the impressive flying department. Pack your nests. The new guy's got actual horsepower and wings the size of my entire family tree. Pegasus, looking down at the world spread out beneath him, probably just thought, this place has potential. It definitely needs more glitter, a few more epic poems, and perhaps some strategically placed, inspiring fountains. And then he set about making it happen one majestic flight, one hoof stomp at a time. His journey and his legend have only just begun. Section 11. Pegasus, as we've seen, has taken to the skies, a creature of light and air embarking on a journey towards poetic inspiration and lofty mountain springs. His journey and his legend have only just begun. But wait a moment, you might be thinking, wasn't there another one? When Medusa's head was so dramatically and decisively severed, didn't two beings spring forth from that unholy union of divine essence and monstrous blood? Indeed, there were. While Pegasus captures the imagination with his ethereal beauty and soaring freedom, his twin brother, Chrysaor, is a figure altogether different, though no less significant in the sprawling, often convoluted tapestry of Greek myth. So, let's rewind just a fraction, back to that dark, echoing cavern, in the instant after your heroic, if somewhat messy, decapitation of Medusa, as Pegasus unfurls his magnificent wings and prepares to ascend. Another form solidifies from the same miraculous wellspring. This is Chrysaor, whose very name proclaims his most striking attribute, of the golden sword. Imagine him, no delicate wings, already clutched with purpose, is a magnificent sword, its blade crafted not from mundane bronze or iron, but from shimmering, unyielding gold, as if forged in the heart of the sun itself. He, too, is a son of Poseidon, his essence, like that of Pegasus, having been carried within Medusa, waiting for this violent moment of release. While Pegasus instinctively sought the open skies, a realm of boundless freedom and inspiration, Chrysaor's path immediately diverges. He is a being of the earth, of power, of tangible dominion. As Pegasus soars upwards, you might see Chrysaor take a firmer stance on the blood-soaked cavern floor, his powerful legs already steady, his gaze fixed on the horizon of the mortal world, a world he seems ready to stride into and claim a part of. Chrysaor, witnessing his twin brother elegantly take off into the wild blue yonder, probably just gave a mental shrug and thought, all right, you handle the pretty skydancing and inspiration gigs. How about some serious smiting to attend down here? And possibly an empire to establish, or at the very least, a really impressive fortress with excellent loot potential and absolutely no snake-haired relatives. That golden sword is no mere ornament. Gold in ancient cultures, as you likely know, was almost universally prized. Its incorruptibility, its warm, sun-like gleam, and its sheer rarity made it a symbol of divinity, royalty, and enduring power. Golden weapons appearing in mythology, like Apollo's golden bow or the golden apples of the Hesperides, often signified an artifact of divine origin, a tool of immense power, or an object of ultimate value. Chrysaor's sword, born with him, is an extension of his very being, a mark of his extraordinary, divinely touched nature, and perhaps a portent of the powerful, and sometimes destructive, lineage he is destined to found. And found a lineage he does. Chrysaor doesn't wander the world alone for long. He takes as his consort Calliope, whose name means beautiful flow. She is an Oceanid, one of the myriad water nymph daughters of the Titan Oceanus, who personified the great world-encircling river, and his wife Tethys. From this union of earth-shaking power, via Poseidon and Chrysaor, and the ancient, flowing waters of the world, come offspring of notable and often monstrous significance. Their most famous son is Geryon, a fearsome giant who possessed 3 bodies joined at the waist, or 3 heads, depending on which ancient account you prefer. Geryon dwelt on the island of Erythea, far in the western stream of Oceanus, and possessed a magnificent herd of red cattle, which the hero Heracles, as one of his famous 12 labors, was tasked to steal. Some ancient genealogies, often a wonderfully tangled and contradictory affair in Greek mythology, also name Echidna, the mother of all monsters, as a daughter of Chrysaor and Calliope. The genealogies of monsters and heroes from this period are incredibly complex, a sort of who's who of terrifying beasts and the heroes who fought them. For instance, Hesiod in his Theogony gives Echidna a different parentage, often Phorcys and Ceto, which would make her Chrysaor's half-sister in a way, but other writers like Apollodorus offer alternative lines. Chrysaor being her father is one significant, if sometimes debated, connection that firmly plants Medusa's grand offspring at the root of many famous mythical beasts. So you see Chrysaor, despite being less celebrated in popular culture than Pegasus, plays a crucial role. He's a bridge figure, a conduit through which the potent, primordial energies unleashed by Medusa's death flow into a new generation of mythological beings who will, in turn, challenge future heroes. He represents a different facet of Poseidon's powerful legacy, not the untamed beauty of the sea or the inspiration of sacred springs, but perhaps the more formidable, foundational power of the earth, or the martial strength required to claim and hold dominion. The extent to which Chrysaor embodies a specific, distinct archetype, such as a chthonic warrior embodying the earth's untamed strength, a primordial king from the world's remote edges, or a vital bridge figure connecting the older, monstrous bloodlines to the new heroic challenges faced by figures like Heracles, remains a subject of thoughtful scholarly discussion, primarily because his direct appearances and detailed narratives in surviving myths are considerably fewer than those of his famous winged brother. While Pegasus was perhaps at this very moment discovering the joys of aerial acrobatics and contemplating which mountain best suited his inspiring presence, Chrysaor was likely already striding purposefully towards his destiny, golden sword in hand, perhaps with a mental list of potential kingdoms to conquer or impressive dynasties to found. You have to wonder if Chrysaor ever felt a twinge of sibling rivalry towards Pegasus. Oh, sure, just fly around looking ethereal and inspiring poet's brother. That's nice. Meanwhile, I'm down here on solid ground, dealing with the practicalities of siring three-bodied giants and inadvertently contributing to the general monster population. It's all very glamorous, you know. This empire-building business. He's a figure of might and direct action, a stark contrast to the poetic soul of his twin, a reminder that from a single, violent event, wildly divergent destinies can unfold. Section 12. While Chrysaor, he of the golden sword, strides purposefully into a future likely filled with battles, kingdoms, and the rather complicated family life that comes with fathering three-bodied giants, let's gently guide our sleepy thoughts back to his ethereal twin. Pegasus, that magnificent creature of pure white and boundless wing, has soared from the grim scene of his birth, leaving the darkness and violence far behind. His journey, as we last saw, was one of instinctive, joyous flight, a creature of air and light seeking its place in a world newly discovered. And it seems that like calls to like, for his path leads him to a sanctuary of beauty, art, and profound inspiration, the sacred slopes of Mount Helicon. Imagine, if you will, Pegasus alighting with an almost soundless grace upon the verdant, flower-strewn flank of this legendary mountain in Boeotia. The air here is different, you notice immediately. It's clearer, sweeter, and seems to vibrate with a subtle, harmonious energy, like distant, unheard music. This is Helicon, one of the two principal earthly residences of the nine muses, those divine daughters of Zeus, the king of the gods, and Mnemosyne, the Titan goddess of memory. These nine sisters, figures like Calliope, muse of epic poetry, her voice resonant with tales of heroes and gods. Clio, the thoughtful guardian of history. Her scroll ever ready. Terpsichore, who embodies the joyous rhythm of dance. Euterpe of music and lyric poetry. And their other graceful siblings are the very wellspring of all creative inspiration in the ancient world. Mount Helicon, as a mainstream historical point of belief, was a very real place to the ancient Greeks, a site peppered with sacred groves, altars dedicated to the Muses, and even small temples or shrines where poets and artists would gather for contests and festivals, hoping to gain divine favor and a spark of that elusive, inspirational fire. Now, one of the most enduring tales associated with Pegasus and his arrival on Mount Helicon involves the creation of a very special spring. The story, as it's often told, goes something like this. The Muses were gathered on their sacred mountain, perhaps engaged in a particularly enchanting singing session. Their voices so divinely beautiful and potent that the very mountain itself began to swell with pleasure, rising, some say, in a state of ecstasy towards the heavens. This, while a lovely sentiment, was apparently causing some minor geological instability. Poseidon, ever the practical, if tempestuous, god, and, not incidentally, Pegasus's father, perceived this unusual levitation of an entire mountain to gently, or perhaps not so gently, halt Helicon's enthusiastic ascent. He commanded his newly born winged son, Pegasus, to descend and strike the mountain with his hoof. You see Pegasus, ever obedient to a divine and paternal directive, circle once above the joyous, rising peak, then plummet gracefully. With a powerful, precise stomp of his strong forehoof upon a specific rock, a miracle occurs. Where his hoof makes contact, the very fabric of the mountain seems to part, and from the earth bursts forth a clear, cool, sparkling spring of water. This is the Hippocrene, its name literally meaning the horse's spring or horse's fountain. So, Pegasus basically invented the percussive geological maintenance call, or perhaps the divine version of mic drop, but with a hoof. Mountain getting a little too big for its britches. Bam! Hoof spring. You're welcome. It's a rather charming image, a flying horse solving an issue of over-enthusiastic topography. The waters of the Hippocrene spring, born from this divine hoof strike, immediately became sacred to the Muses. More than that, they were believed to possess a unique, magical property, to grant poetic inspiration and unlock creative genius in any mortal fortunate enough to drink from them. For centuries, poets in antiquity would invoke the Muses in their opening lines and metaphorically speak of drinking from the Heliconian springs, or directly from Hippocrene itself as a way of signaling their quest for divine inspiration. As a quirky little tidbit of local cult practice, it's known that besides the famous Hippocrene, another spring on Mount Helicon, also sacred to the Muses, was named Agonippe. The offerings made to the Muses at these sacred springs were often simple and pure, such as libations of milk, honey, and water, but pointedly not wine, as the Muses were generally considered sober, clear-headed deities, their inspiration a pure, intellectual fire rather than an intoxicated frenzy. And so Pegasus, the beautiful winged horse, finds his place. He becomes a beloved companion of the 9 Muses, dwelling peacefully with them on the serene slopes of Helicon. He is no longer just a miraculous creature born of violence, but a living symbol of soaring artistic imagination, the untamed, potent inspiration that can strike like a hoof from heaven, releasing a life-giving stream of creativity. Whether the myth of Pegasus creating the Hippocrene spring was an ancient ideological tale, one designed to explain the origin of a pre-existing horse cult or a sacred horse named Sprang already present on Mount Helicon, or if it was a slightly later poetic invention by artists wanting to more firmly and symbolically link the magnificent winged horse with the Muses and the very essence of poetic inspiration, remains a topic of continuing scholarly interest and delightful interpretation. For Pegasus, at least for this tranquil chapter of his existence, life is good. He has traded the dark, dank cave of his birth for sunlit mountain meadows, the hissing of his mother's serpentine hair for the harmonious songs of the Muses. He is surrounded by beauty, by art, by the gentle pursuit of knowledge and creative expression. Imagine the jam sessions on Mount Helicon, 9 incredibly talented goddesses of every conceivable art form, and a divinely inspired flying horse, perhaps providing a sort of ethereal percussion with the beat of his wings, or just looking generally magnificent in the background. Probably sounded amazing, if a little difficult to book for birthday parties or weddings on short notice. Pegasus, chilling with the muses, perhaps also became their unofficial idea bouncer or creative consultant. You can almost hear him neighing thoughtfully, that epic poem is a bit flat in the third stanza, Calliope. Why don't you try again after a refreshing sip from my spring? And maybe, just maybe, add a few more heroic deeds, and perhaps a Pegasus cameo, even for a horse with wings. It is indeed a far cry from his grim origins, this idyllic existence Pegasus now enjoys among the muses on Mount Helicon, a testament to the transformative power of finding one's true place. But the world of mortals, with its own heroes, ambitions, and inevitable tragedies, continues to spin below. And a creature as magnificent, as unique, as the winged horse Pegasus could not remain a secret of the mountain heights forever. Such unparalleled grace and power are bound to attract attention, especially from those mortals who aspire to touch the divine, to achieve deeds that will echo through eternity. And so, a new thread begins to weave itself into Pegasus's destiny, the thread of a young hero named Bellerophon. But wait, you might be murmuring into your pillow, another hero? We just finished with Perseus. But the age of Greek myth was a busy time for heroes, each with their own epic quests and rather complicated family trees. Bellerophon, like Perseus, boasts a lineage touched by the divine, or at least by figures of great renown. He is often called the grandson of the famously cunning King Sisyphus of Corinth, or the son of Sisyphus's son, Glaucus, who was also a king of Corinth and met a rather grisly end, devoured by his own flesh-eating Mars. Some whispers in the ancient genealogies even suggest Bellerophon's true father was none other than Poseidon himself. If so, this would make him a sort of half-brother to Pegasus, adding an intriguing, perhaps even fated, layer to his ambition to tame the winged steed. His original name, it said, was Hipponus, but this shedding of blood sets the stage for much of his early story. You can picture Bellerophon in his youth, strikingly handsome, exceptionally brave, a skilled warrior, embodying many of the classic heroic virtues. But perhaps, if you look closely, you might also see a faint glimmer of excessive pride, a touch of the hubris that so often proves to be the tragic flaw of even the greatest Greek heroes. His story, like many, begins with misfortune. Due to this accidental slaying, be it of Belarus or another kinsman, he is stained with miasma, the ritual pollution that clung to anyone who had shed blood, regardless of intent. In ancient Greece, this was a very serious matter. Such pollution made one an outcast, feared and shunned, until they could undergo formal rites of purification, or catharsis, typically performed by a king or a powerful priest who could ritually cleanse the taint. So, Bellerophon is forced into exile from his home in Corinth, and he travels to the court of King Priestess in Tiryns, or sometimes Argos, seeking this vital purification. King Priestess graciously performs the necessary rites, and Bellerophon, now cleansed, resides as an honored guest in his court. But peace, for a hero, is often fleeting. Priestess' wife, Queen Sthenibia, some call her Antii, finds herself quite taken with a handsome young exile. She makes advances. Bellerophon, perhaps out of honor for his host or simply lack of interest, rejects her. Queen Sthenibia, clearly not one to handle rejection with grace, and embodying a rather timeless trope of scorned ambition, promptly accuses Bellerophon to her husband, King Priestess, of having tried to seduce or even assault her. Ancient HR departments, it seems, were sorely lacking, and complaints often escalated rather dramatically to the attempted execution stage. Priestess, caught in a bind, he believes his wife, yet he is reluctant to directly kill a guest he has purified, fearing the wrath of Zeus Xenios, protector of guests, and the relentless pursuit of the Erinyes. The Furies who avenge such betrayals devises a cunning, if cowardly, solution. He decides to outsource the problem. He sends Bellerophon on a mission to his father-in-law, King Iobates of Lycia, a distant kingdom in Anatolia. And with Bellerophon, Priestess sends a sealed tablet or a folded letter. This message, which Bellerophon carries unwittingly, contains a simple, deadly instruction for Iobates. Pray remove the bearer from this world. He has tried to violate my wife, your daughter. This letter of doom motif, where an unsuspecting messenger carries their own death warrant, is a rather quirky but surprisingly widespread theme in folklore and mythology across many cultures. It effectively highlights the hero's innocent, or perhaps fated, journey into peril, often orchestrated by deceit and hidden malice. Now, somewhere along this complex timeline, perhaps before he even sets out for Lycia, or later, when King Iobates begins assigning him a series of impossibly dangerous tasks designed to fulfill Priestess' deadly request, Bellerophon learns of the existence of Pegasus. He hears tales of the magnificent winged horse, dwelling among the Muses, a creature of divine origin, untamed and untamable. And a bold, audacious dream forms in Bellerophon's heart. He will be the one to capture and ride this celestial steed. Why Pegasus? Perhaps for the sheer glory of it, the ultimate heroic accessory. Or perhaps he sees in Pegasus a vital ally, a means to accomplish the perilous labors that Iobates will soon set before him. Tasks like slaying the monstrous chimera. The desire to master such a unique and divine creature would surely elevate his own status among heroes. Whether Bellerophon's ambition to tame Pegasus was primarily driven by a pragmatic need for a powerful, winged mount to overcome the trials he faced, or by a deeper, perhaps more hubristic, yearning to conquer a divine creature and thereby assert his own exceptional, almost godlike status, is interpreted differently by various scholars who analyze the layers of his complex myth. His initial attempts, you can imagine, are entirely fruitless. How does one even approach a creature that can simply unfurl its wings and ascend to the heavens, leaving would-be captors earthbound and frustrated? Bellerophon's early efforts to tame Pegasus probably involved a lot of strategic and ultimately useless net-throwing. Some undignified tumbles down hillsides after futile chases, and Pegasus just observing him from a lofty perch with an air of majestic, unbothered amusement. Nice try, determined mortal. You can almost hear the wind whisper Pegasus's thoughts. Points for effort. Got any enchanted sugar cubes by any chance? You can imagine Bellerophon's first optimistic thought. How hard can it really be? It's fundamentally just a horse, albeit one with enormous wings, that was quite literally born from a beheaded monster's neck, and currently chills with a bunch of goddesses on a sacred mountain. Okay, fine. Maybe it's a tad tricky. Despairing of his own abilities, Bellerophon, in his moment of need, does what many Greek heroes do. He seeks divine counsel. Some versions of the myth say he consults the wise seer Perilous, who advises him to sleep in a temple of Athena. Others say he prays directly and fervently to the goddess, the patroness of heroes, wisdom, and clever crafts. He knows that to achieve the impossible, he will need more than mortal strength and determination. He will need a touch of divine magic. He will indeed need a touch of divine magic, you realize, as Bellerophon, our ambitious young hero. Mortal strength, and even the most determined can only take one so far when the objective is a creature born of gods and myth, as free as the winds themselves. And so Bellerophon, following the counsel of the wise seer Perilous, or perhaps guided by his own desperate intuition, seeks out the divine. He makes his way to a temple of Athena, the goddess of wisdom, strategic warfare, and handicrafts, which, it turns out, includes the crafting of divinely effective equestrian equipment. There, in the solemn, echoing stillness of her sanctuary, he offers up his fervent prayers, Or perhaps he simply lays his weary head upon the cool stone altar and drifts into an exhausted, hope-filled sleep. And Athena, who has a well-documented penchant for aiding heroes who demonstrate both courage and a willingness to listen to good advice, especially her good advice, does not disappoint. She appears to you, Bellerophon, in a dream, or perhaps as a shimmering, awe-inspiring presence right there in her temple. She is tall and majestic, her gray eyes glinting with a mixture of divine wisdom and perhaps a hint of amusement at your audacious ambition. Maybe her little owl, the symbol of her sagacity, is perched quietly on her shoulder. Blinking owlishly, in her outstretched hand, she holds the solution to your seemingly insurmountable problem, a bridle. But this is no ordinary leather and bronze contraption. It is a bridle of purest, gleaming gold, divinely wrought, pulsing with a soft, magical light, its intricate craftsmanship hinting at its celestial origin. Take this, Bellerophon. Her voice might resonate in your mind, clear and calm. It alone can gentle the untamed spirit of Pegasus. But first, you must honor his sire. Go and sacrifice a white bull of the finest quality to Poseidon, lord of horses and the deep sea. Golden objects, as you know, frequently appear in myths and legends across the globe, almost universally signifying divine origin, immense power, or sacredness. A golden bridle, therefore, would be an artifact of incredible prestige and magical potency. Horse taming itself was a vital skill in the ancient world, crucial for agriculture, transport, and warfare, and specialized equipment, even if not quite as magical as this one, was key to controlling and guiding these powerful animals. Athena, as the goddess of wisdom, strategy, and practical crafts, is the perfect divine patron to provide such a specialized, effective tool. Her instruction to sacrifice to Poseidon is also key, a mark of respect to Pegasus's powerful father, an acknowledgement of the divine lineage of the creature you seek to master, and perhaps a way of seeking Poseidon's tacit approval for your endeavor. Awakening from the dream, or blinking as the divine presence fades, you find the golden bridle lying beside you, cool and solid in your grasp, its otherworldly gleam a tangible proof of the goddess's favor. With renewed hope and a heart full of gratitude, you first perform the sacrifice to Poseidon as instructed, the scent of the offering rising to the heavens. Then, armed with this celestial gift, you set out once more to find the elusive winged horse. You recall Pegasus frequenting clear springs, places of purity and refreshment. And so, you make your way to a well-known, sacred spring, perhaps the Perennes spring in your own home city of Corinth, its waters renowned for their sweetness and believed to be a favorite drinking spot of Pegasus. Or maybe you journey back towards the idyllic slopes of Helicon, near the Hippocrene spring he himself created. Some local legends, or quirky, lesser-known cult practices in ancient Greece actually involved very specific rituals or types of offerings when approaching sacred springs or attempting to interact with animals believed to be under divine protection or to possess a divine nature. Your instructed sacrifice to Poseidon, Pegasus's sire, could certainly be seen as a form of this, a necessary step to ensure divine acquiescence before attempting to approach such a special creature. And there, beside the crystal-clear waters of the chosen spring, its surface reflecting the blue sky and the whispering leaves of overhanging trees, you see him. Pegasus. He is even more magnificent up close than in your wildest imaginings. His white coat shimmering, his great wings folded regally at his sides as he dips his noble head to drink. He is calm, serene, completely unaware of your approach. You move slowly, your heart pounding, the golden bridle held out before you like a sacred offering. Pegasus, who probably just wanted a quiet, uninterrupted drink after a morning of inspiring the muses or performing aerial ballets, sees the shiny golden thing in your hand and perhaps cocks his head, his intelligent eyes assessing you. He might think, more bling? And this one comes with a rather determined-looking, heroic human attached. All right, mortal, let's see where this particular adventure goes. As you draw near, he does not bolt. He does not rear in aggression. Instead, a sense of calm seems to emanate from the golden bridle, a gentle, divine persuasion that soothes the wild spirit of the winged steed. With a steady hand, you reach out and gently, reverently, slip the divinely crafted headstall over Pegasus's noble brow, the golden bit settling softly in his mouth. There is no struggle, no resistance. It is a moment of pure, quiet magic, a testament to Athena's wisdom and the power of her gift. Pegasus, the untamable, the unbridled spirit of the air, yields. He stands quietly, accepting the bridle, accepting you. The sheer exhilaration of that moment courses through you. You reach up, your hand stroking the soft muzzle, feeling the powerful muscles beneath the silken white coat. Then, with a surge of courage and excitement, you swing yourself onto his broad back. For a moment, you both stand, a hero and his winged steed, poised between the earth and the sky. The narrative of Pegasus's taming by Bellerophon, particularly through the use of a divinely bestowed bridle, often raises intriguing questions among scholars regarding the true nature of this sudden and willing submission. Was it a genuine meeting of minds, a true companionship forged in that moment? Or was it primarily a magical compulsion exerted by the artifact, or perhaps even a broader symbolic representation of human intellect, aided by divine wisdom, successfully mastering untamed, wild, divine nature for a heroic purpose? Then, with a powerful bunching of muscles, Pegasus leaps, not forward but upward. His great wings beat the air, and you are soaring, a human rider on a divine winged horse. The wind roars in your ears, the ground plummets away, and the sheer, unadulterated joy of flight, a sensation only dreamed of by mortals, is yours. Bellerophon and Pegasus, the ancient world's newest and arguably most spectacular power couple. They probably should have had some epic, heroic theme music composed by the muses themselves, ready to play every time they took off on a new adventure. You can only imagine King Iabates, back in Lycia, patiently waiting for news of your demise as you undertake his impossible tasks. He is about to get a very serious shock when you, the hero he tried to discreetly eliminate, show up not just alive, but on the back of a legendary flying horse. Right? He'll be muttering, that specific contingency definitely wasn't covered in the how to get rid of unwanted, surprisingly resilient heroes via convoluted assassination plots manual. The unbridled has been bridled, and your legend, Bellerophon, is about to take flight. The unbridled has been bridled, and your legend, Bellerophon, is indeed about to take flight, quite literally, upon the magnificent back of Pegasus. For a time, you two are an unstoppable force, a hero and his winged steed accomplishing deeds that boggle the mortal mind. Together, you confront and slay the monstrous, fire-breathing chimera, its lion head, goat body, and serpent tail no match for your aerial agility and divinely guided spear. You conquer the fierce Solymi warriors and then the warrior women, the Amazons, your campaign's legendary. Your name synonymous with impossible heroism. Pegasus is your loyal companion, your peerless mount, the wind beneath your heroic wings, carrying you to victory after victory. But with great success, as so often happens in these ancient tales, comes a creeping, insidious danger. Hubris, that overweening pride, that dangerous arrogance that whispers to a mortal that they are somehow more than mortal, perhaps even equal to the gods themselves. You, Bellerophon, having achieved so much, begin to believe your own hype just a little too much. You start to think that your place is not merely among the greatest of earthly heroes, but among the deathless gods on high. And so, in a final, fatal act of presumption, you conceive your boldest and most foolish dream yet. You decide to fly Pegasus to the very summit of Mount Olympus, to the home of the gods themselves, uninvited. This In ancient Greek belief was a cardinal sin. Hubris of this magnitude, this direct challenge to the divine order, almost invariably invited nemesis. Swift and terrible retribution from the offended heavens. Bellerophon, attempting to crash the gods' ultimate celestial gated community on Olympus, was about to find out that their divine HOA rules were very strictly enforced, especially the prominent no mortals on uninvited flying horses trespassing in Godland clause. Zeus, king of the gods, perched on his Olympian throne, sees your audacious ascent. His brow darkens not with admiration for your courage, but with righteous anger at your insolence. He doesn't need to unleash a thunderbolt himself. A simpler, yet equally effective, method will do. He sent a tiny buzzing gadfly, this seemingly insignificant insect, divinely dispatched, stings Pegasus sharply under the wing or flank as he soars ever higher, nearing the golden gates of Olympus. Startled, maddened by the sudden, unexpected pain, Pegasus rears violently in midair. And you, Bellerophon, for all your skill as a rider, are unseated. You plummet, a falling star of mortal ambition, screaming through the empty sky, down, 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 back to the earth you sought to transcend. Pegasus, now riderless, his loyalty to you perhaps broken by that moment of pain or by a higher divine calling, continues his ascent, or is gently guided upwards by Zeus's will. Your fall, Bellerophon, is devastating. You don't die, not immediately. That would be too merciful for a hero who dared so greatly. Instead, you land crippled, perhaps blinded, your body broken, your spirit crushed. You are forced to wander the earth alone, lame and accursed, shunned by gods and mortals alike, a bitter, forgotten man. A living testament to the perils of pride. A truly tragic end for a hero who once soared so high. The gadfly, it turns out, was just extremely effective divine pest control. But what of Pegasus? Now free of his mortal master, he arrives on Mount Olympus, not as an intruder, but as a welcome addition to the celestial sphere. His beauty, his grace, his divine parentage, all make him a fitting resident of the god's home. And Zeus, perhaps pleased by the horse's innate nobility, or simply finding a practical use for such a magnificent creature, assigns him a singular honor. Pegasus becomes the bearer of Zeus's thunderbolts, those symbols of ultimate divine power and wrath. Imagine him, if you will, soaring through the Olympian ether, his white coat gleaming, carrying those jagged spears of lightning, their fearsome energy crackling around him, delivering them to Zeus whenever the king of the gods has a point to make, or a particularly recalcitrant titan to smite. While carrying thunderbolts is certainly Pegasus's most high-profile Olympian job, it's a quirky thought that some minor ancient sources or poetic allusions occasionally give other, perhaps less dramatic, tasks to various divine animals residing on Olympus. Sometimes they're simply companions to specific gods, or they might add to the general celestial menagerie, like a divinely curated petting zoo. Pegasus, however, definitely got a pretty significant gig, right up there with Eagle and Ganymede. And so, Pegasus serves Zeus faithfully for many long years, a creature of myth and magic dwelling among the immortals. Then, as a final honor, a testament to his beauty, his service, and his unique story, Zeus places him among the stars. He becomes the constellation Pegasus, his familiar square shape and trailing stars forever galloping across the autumn night sky, a celestial reminder of his legend. This transformation into a star or constellation, known as catasterism, was a common motif in Greek mythology, a way of granting immortal honor and remembrance to favored heroes, beloved creatures, or even significant objects. The exact timing and specific circumstances of Pegasus's catasterism do vary somewhat in the surviving mythological accounts. Some scholars suggest it occurred after a long and distinguished period of service to Zeus, a kind of divine retirement plan, while others see it as a more immediate reward for his inherent nobility or as a means to preserve his unique beauty and compelling story eternally in the heavens for all mortals to gaze upon and wonder. So, Pegasus, born from the blood of a cursed monster and the power of a sea god, tamer of mountains with a stomp of his hoof, companion to muses, steed of a great hero, and finally, thunderbolt bearer to the king of gods, finds his ultimate peace and immortality among the silent, glittering stars. From a violent, messy birth in a dark cavern, he soared to the heights of poetic inspiration, then to the very halls of Olympus, and finally into the eternal tapestry of the night sky. It's quite the career progression when you think about it. From miracle birth in a well-known monster's lair to celestial uber for highly volatile lightning bolts to permanent, shiny, and rather iconic sky decoration. Next time you find yourself stargazing on a clear night and spot the great square of Pegasus, just take a moment to remember his wild, wondrous origin story. It certainly makes Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star seem rather wonderfully tame by comparison, doesn't it? His tale, like his constellation, endures, and now, as the story of Pegasus finds its place among the eternal stars, let our own journey for tonight begin its gentle descent. The adventures, the magic, the heroes, and the monsters can all fade softly into the background of your mind. Feel the lingering echo of Pegasus's mighty wings, the faint scent of Olympian ambrosia, the cool stillness of the starlit sky. There's no need to hold on to the details now. No need to follow any thread of the narrative any further. Let it all become a soft, shimmering tapestry, a comfortable, distant dream. The world of myth, with all its grandeur and its gentle, sleepy whispers, has served its purpose for tonight. It has carried you, hopefully, to the very edge of slumber. Allow yourself to drift, to float, to release any remaining tension from your body, from your mind. Imagine yourself as light as one of Pegasus's feathers, caught on a gentle night breeze, spiraling slowly, peacefully downwards, towards a deep and restful sleep. Every breath you take now draws you deeper into that calm, quiet space. The stories are done. The night is here, and rest is waiting for you, soft and welcoming. There's nothing left to do but surrender to the quiet pull of sleep. Let the last images of winged horses and starry skies dissolve into the comfortable darkness. Peace be with you.